I became ill with ME-CFS over 7 years ago. Those words are kind of strange for me to say because when I first became ill, I thought that I would get better and recover within 6 months and put it all behind me and move on with my life. Those 6 months came and went, as did a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and now 7 years. And I'm still ill. I still have ME-CFS. There's something very sad about that this passage of time has gone past. I became ill when I was almost 29. I'm now 36. And those years which promised to be great years, and at a time in which my life was really opening up, actually proved to be a time when my life in many ways, though not all, actually closed down. And that does come, as I say, with great sadness. In today's video, I want to reflect more on this and talk about how, even though I don't think I'll ever be quite okay with what's happened, how I have nevertheless, to some extent, come to terms. The passage of time, the passing of the years with ME-CFS, and how I have tried to see it in a better light, as hard as that time has been. First, my name is Patrick Usher, and I am author of the book Understanding ME-CFS and Strategies for Healing, in which I break down some of the latest, most exciting research into ME-CFS and long COVID, as well as talking about a range of treatment strategies that I have tried in order to improve my own quality of life. The links for that book are down below, as well as a link to a free sample chapter. So I wasn't really planning on doing this video, but last night I was watching a YouTuber who is out in a city called Mérida in Mexico. And Mérida is a beautiful city in the Yucatan, and it's a very, very safe city. I was actually there the end of 2018 and early 2019. And it was a very special trip for me. I planned it long in advance, and I was really, really excited about it. As it happened, in 2018 I developed ME-CFS, and initially it was more mild. It was still pretty unpleasant when I crashed and so on, but it was more mild. And being the ever optimist, I decided that I would still go to Mexico. And so I did. I went to Mexico with ME-CFS. In hindsight, that wasn't a good idea, and life became pretty difficult out there, and in the end, I basically had to leave with my tail between my legs and go home because I was too ill to be there. But nevertheless, there were some nice times, and I was fairly functional for the first few months, and I have very warm memories of Mérida. The other night, when I was watching this YouTuber, he was talking from one of the squares that I often used to sit in, at Parque Santana. And he was walking around the square, and it was so familiar to me and vivid, and just like I felt like I was back there again. And it's a strange thing when you have that experience where you suddenly feel like you're back somewhere, but actually a large passage of time has elapsed and a lot of life experiences have happened. And I've often watched videos of Mérida since my time there, and I like seeing it. In this particular occasion, I was actually just hit by a wave of sadness, and it was very strong. Like almost kind of feeling like I was back there as I was watching this person walking around. I was just struck by all the things that awaited that younger version of myself, the 29-year-old Patrick, was fighting in his own way then, but had no idea what was yet to come, and had no idea of all the different suffering and traumas of ME-CFS that still awaited. It's particularly relevant because I know that the person I was then was trying his best to recover and move on, and he was trying hard. And he could have had no idea that the illness would have been so strong and difficult to get out of, and in fact that it could get even worse. And so I was left very sad thinking of the fight and optimism that I had at that time, at the start of my illness, vis-a-vis what I now know would actually come to pass. What that Patrick in that square in Santana didn't know was that he would lose a huge amount of his functionality within a year. That he'd go from being able to do 7,000 or 8,000 steps to 1,000 to 2,000 steps. That he would go from crashing after walking for 40 minutes to go to crashing after walking for 3, 4 or 5 minutes. that the crashes would become more severe, that walking up the stairs too quickly might leave him in bed for a week, that he would lose his capacity to have an independent life, and that he'd have to move back in with his father. That Patrick didn't know, within a couple of years, he was going to be experiencing symptoms that were so severe that they felt, and in fact were, life-threatening, and that those would go on for months, where he was actually fighting for the morning light to try and stay alive, and that ultimately he would be hospitalised in a very serious situation, and that at the end of that, he'd be told his problems were due to mental illness. He didn't know back then, as someone who was a huge believer in the body's capacity to heal itself and the power of lifestyle changes, that those things were not going to be enough, that he was going to have to think outside the box, try treatments that scared him, like going to Germany to do HELP apheresis, a blood washing procedure in a dialysis centre, or to come to Romania to do hyperbaric oxygen, or to try taking different medications. And he didn't know that a certain cycle was going to repeat itself over and over, of trying something, getting back some hope, and then maybe it only worked to some extent or not at all, then going back into despair, trying to rekindle hope again. And so when I saw that video the other night, I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with sadness and also a kind of compassion for what I have been through and what I could never have possibly imagined, that this would go on and on and on, and that 7 years later I'd still be trying to get better, and that in between then and now so many assaults and challenges would have beset my body. And I'll be absolutely upfront, there is no, in terms of just at a very basic level, a human level, there's no fudging any of that. There's no airbrushing it. There's no saying, I'm glad it happened. I'm not actually glad it happened. It's been shit a lot of the time. So that's all a given. The passage of time with ME-CFS has been a real struggle, and that's just a fact. On the other hand, when we, in life in general, we are dealt certain cards, and some people are dealt the card of having ME-CFS, and some people are dealt a different card of ill health. They die before they're even 12 years old. And other people are dealt the card of being in a war zone. And some people are dealt no particular cards at all. It's just how it goes. It's a fact. Ultimately, the cards are not in our power, but how we try to respond to them very much is. And so, despite the fact that I've been through 7 very difficult years, I also look back to that younger version of myself in Mexico. I see that same fight in him, and at that time he didn't understand ME-CFS very well. He was trying to get better. That same fight has continued. It's been a consistent thread throughout the whole experience. And if that thread had not been there at all, if I hadn't tried to face the cards the best way that I knew how at any given moment, and of course I have made mistakes, but if I hadn't had that thread, things would have turned out a lot worse. And so my point is that whatever cards we're dealt, even if it means we're chronically ill for a long time, we have to keep asking ourselves, how can I actually try and improve for a better tomorrow? It may or may not happen, but the worst thing is not to try. So I can also look back at each stage of my illness and I can say, well done. I can say, well done to the younger version of myself who, yes, did become less functional, much less functional, but somehow worked out a way to regain a decent level of functionality. I can say well done for being brave enough to go and try different treatments. Treatments, some of them really scared me, but they made sense and I jumped into the unknown to go and try them. I can say well done for trying to get your head around this illness and learn about the research. I can say well done for having worked out what was causing the life-threatening symptoms I had 5 years ago that ended up with me being hospitalised, and actually then writing a book about why that diagnosis of mental illness was wrong, and finding now professors who are working with me to try and bring those ideas forward to actually challenge that diagnosis. I can say well done for writing the most recent book, sharing everything I've learned and turning around the experience. I can say well done now that I'm still trying. And believe you me, I'm not, unlike at the beginning of the illness, I was more fully focused on hope and trying to get better. And as time has gone on, I'd be lying not to say that actually I have times of, where I'm feeling both hopeful and despairing. But the hope is still there, and I'm still taking actions for a better future. I can say well done to myself for that. And so this video is not to, as I say, gloss over anything or make things out to be better than they are. I mean, so often, usually they've recovered, but lots of people who say, I'm so glad I had ME-CFS because, hey, I'm feeling so much, my perspective on life is more grounded, etc. Fine. But there's lots of people who have ME-CFS and they're still trying to get better. So they haven't got to that state of saintly wisdom from the other side just yet. So I'm not glossing over anything here. What I am trying to say is, if you're someone watching this who's also had ME-CFS a long time, to be proud of yourself for the fight that you have given to the illness, while recognising the imperfections that are in all of us. To really say well done to yourself, because this is not an easy set of cards. That's just the truth. It's not an easy set of cards for so many reasons. This capacity to fight and try and respond the best we can is something that's very precious, something to hold on to, and so that even if, like myself, you feel very sad about how the years may have panned out, if you hold on to that thread, you can at least look back on them without regret, because you were trying. And that's the most important thing, is that we actually keep trying and aiming for a better tomorrow. Maybe we try 100 treatments and 99 of them don't work, but one of them might. Maybe we make hundreds of efforts to pace better and actually help our body to heal, and we fail. But maybe eventually we will actually string together the healing streak that we need in order for the body to get better. There's a helpful analogy from a Stoic philosophy, which is that it's a bit like, we're like an archer who's aiming at a target, and we don't know whether or not we can hit the target. We can aim the bow as best we can, we can focus on the weather conditions and so on, but we cannot guarantee actually getting it's not certain. What we can do is everything in our power to aim the best way possible. That's really ultimately all we can do. And if we are doing it, our conscience can rest easy, even if our life is not as we would like it to be. And I also think that there's something very precious about really owning your own story, because ultimately it doesn't really serve us not to accept how our life has turned out, because it is that way. We need to be able to radically accept the truth of how our life has panned out. There's a few lines that I once read that really resonate with me. If my life were a song, whether happy or sad, I would sing it and I wouldn't miss a single note. Each of us walks our own journey. We need to remain close to ourselves throughout it. We need to remain close to ourselves no matter what is actually happening. In that view, as sad as we may be about how things have turned out, it's really important that we actually do accept that that is how they were. That we remain close to ourselves, that we remain trying to pull the bow as best we can, to play the cards as best we can, and ultimately, as the mere mortals that we are, that's all that any of us can do, no matter what challenges we actually have. So, that's it for this video, more philosophical one. Please let me know your thoughts. Please let me know if you've been struggling with ME-CFS for a while. How do you relate to that? How have you tried to cope with that? What are your difficulties around that? And if you're someone who's not had ME-CFS for very long, I don't mean for this video to be a bit of a downer. You've every chance of recovering, but this is something that happens. It is a familiar thing for a lot of ME-CFS patients. I've got some friends who've been ill for decades, and it's part and parcel of the potential reality of the illness. So please leave your thoughts down below. Please consider joining my Patreon and Discord treatments and research community, which has a focused Discord server aimed at us all sharing tips and strategies and research with each other to help us move forward. It has Zoom calls once a month where we do the same, and also ability to submit questions for Q&A videos that I will be doing, and also for guest speakers. So please check that out in the description box below. And so that's it for this video. Maybe one day I'll go back to Merida and I'll go back to Parque Santana, and I will do a video from there when I'm much better, to mark a triumphant return to good health, or not, as the case may be, but it's good to have dreams as well. So leave your comments down below, and I look forward to engaging with you there, and I'll see you in the next video. This video is sponsored by Normalite. Now, I have been using Normalite for 3 years,
and it is the most helpful supplement that I have found in managing my own condition. Like a lot of ME-CFS patients, I suffer with low blood volume, and Normalite is a highly effective strategy for combating this issue. It is a form of oral rehydration solution, and one study by Meadow et al. From 2019 found that this kind of formulation can boost blood volume as effectively as a saline IV. When I drink Normalite, I really notice the difference. I can feel the blood volume expanding throughout my body, my legs become lighter, my nervous system calms down. Even better is that Normalite has been specifically created for patients with illnesses like ME-CFS, long COVID and POTS. So check out the link below to order your own bags of Normalite. I personally enjoy the pure flavour, but it does come in a range of options.